I feel like the law of authenticity is something where you kind of go, okay, well, what if I just let my truth be enough? What if I let it come out? What if I didn't try to please anybody, didn't try to be liked? What if I was just unapologetically me and I let that happen?
Yeah.
And that is a risk, but I think there's a great reward that can come out of it if you're willing to not only try it but commit to it.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte,
identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art.
Gotta hide my self view, Brandon. There we go. Don't want to see my ugly mug. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Way of the Artist. We've got a really cool one. I'm excited to launch into this one. We've got a lot of material to go through, I guess. But in this one, we're kind of going back through all of the artist laws again, which, we covered all in like the early, first 25 episodes, I think, of the podcast. And in the background, we've been sort of working on this little project, which is essentially, it's like all of the laws condensed and distilled down into this little, what did we end up calling it, Brandon? I can't even think of it off the top of my head.
The creative JumpStarter.
The creative JumpStarter. So all of these laws sort of condensed down into like their essence to give you some kind of like perspective and motivation and inspiration to take that leap, start creating all of that stuff. So we're pretty proud of it. We're pretty proud of how this thing has come up, and it's a downloadable thing to kind of commemorate the launching of our website, which thanks to Brandon, who's been hard at work on that. So we thought what we would do to commemorate the website and this new downloadable and having gone through this process is let's go through all of these laws again. We're going to read out what they say, and then we're going to dive into them a little bit, see if there's something to like really explore a little bit deeper with it. And this is part one. This is part one of two parts because we needed to give ourselves a little bit of time to talk about all these, and there's 20 of these laws to go through. So we're going to go through 10 of them today, and then we're going to do 10 of them in the next podcast. And I'm excited, man. Got anything to add before we do this?
Yeah, well, I'm excited as well. And I will say that, when we started kind of doing this new show, the new kind of whole new brand of the show and the direction of the show, we decided to call it Way of the Artist because, we just, after interviewing a lot of people and kind of going through this whole process, we realized that like every creative person or every person is on their own path in their own way. And it's an artistic kind of creative journey. And we noticed these things, we noticed these laws that were kind of consistent from every person, like these things that kind of stood true between every conversation, everything, and things that we could constantly kind of go back to and look at. And I think when we were talking about creating the ebook in the beginning, or this kind of PDF giveaway thing that we were doing, it was kind of interesting because we were like, well, let's create something that helps artists solve problems, like to get through their blocks, because like a lot of artists get blocked. And that was definitely a part of what it began as. But then I think it evolved into this thing where it was like, sometimes you're not even blocked. You just need to jump. You just need to go. You just need to take that first step. You need to kind of leap into it.
Push.
Yeah. And so that's why it kind of got evolved into the JumpStarter, where it's like still a problem solver, but you don't have to wait till you have a problem to use it. You can just be like, okay, I want to get started. And then you got something. And I think what's really cool about it too, is you had the idea of creating it kind of like a card set, where you could kind of just pull a card and then be like, okay, let me use this one to kind of get myself going. So Anyway, I think that's going to be cool. We're going to go over each one. You wrote some really good definitions. You broke them down into like something a little more simple and processable and actionable, I think, which is really cool. So yeah, I guess we'll talk about each one and we'll just kind of maybe revisit what we think about them and what they are. And
all who knows? I'm mildly concerned that we're going to discover like a better way of putting it than the way that I've put it. But you know what? That's, you start somewhere, right? You start somewhere and you go with what you got. And then, I'm sure down the line in the future, there might be like a revision that happens to some of this stuff, but that's the way of it, man. That's the way of it. So with, I guess without further ado, let's start this. Let's start this. And you know what? Let's start with beginning. The law of beginning seems appropriate.
Seems right.
All right. So beginning. In order to create what is in your heart, you must begin. Decide to engage, to take that first step, however small that is. You don't need to have everything figured out. Begin.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a great law because everything does have to begin. I remember we did a whole podcast on each of these, so you can always go back and revisit that if you want, but you got to begin. You got to start somewhere. And I think the perfectionist wants to be at the end of the journey as they begin it. And that's kind of their problem, right? They're like, well, I need more preparation, more things got to be in line, more things got to be figured out. And, really like you're going to figure out so much from the beginning of your journey to the end of your journey. So, you got to just kind of decide that, hey, I'm going to take an action step. Something I was kind of teaching in my course the other day was, if you're climbing a mountain and the goal is to get to the peak, right? Is to get to the pinnacle and see the view. The mountain doesn't care about the steps you take. It doesn't care if you tripped. It doesn't care if you stumble. It's going to lift you up with every step. So just take a step. You know what I mean? And I think this takes a lot of pressure off because another thought that I wanted to kind of pass on, and this was kind of something I learned from Alan Watts, was that there's an exchange when you're climbing a mountain. Like there's a lot of begroaning and begrudging people do, like, oh, it's so hard. I'm climbing the mountain, blah, blah, blah. But the mountain, as you're climbing it, is also lifting you. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the relationship between what you're trying to do, by actually doing it, it lifts you. So the law of beginning to me in a lot of ways is kind of like, just take a step, let it lift you, and you will be higher and you will be better and you will be in a better position than you were when you started. And yes, maybe you'll see more, maybe you'll know more, maybe you'll have more ready, but you gotta begin by taking a step.
Yeah. I think another part of this one as well is, this thing of deciding to engage with something. I think that is that's such an important thing, and I would say that it's always goes best with some kind of action. Like deciding to engage with something, whatever step that is, like whatever step you can take right now. Maybe you've got the idea for some kind of script or a story or a novel or something like that. Well, it's like start with just an outline or something. Start with sitting down, writing. It's like, well, what is this story about? Like just you do something. Like I remember Dov Simmons, telling us about like, he had this thing. I hope I'm not giving anything that I shouldn't away.
I feel like anything you say is only going to promote his course more, which is a great course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, cause he had this whole thing of like how to write a script in 2 weeks or something like that was part of his weekend filmmaking crash course. And day one was like write the name of it, the title. The title. Yeah. Write the title at the top of the page. That's it. Like day one is write the title. And I think that's such a beautiful illustration of this law of beginning. It's a small action. It's you kind of declaring to yourself and to the universe and everything. It's like, okay, I am doing this. I am choosing to engage with this idea, with this act of creativity. And it begins with a small gesture, right? It's like, there's the title at the top of the page. You have begun.
Yes. Yeah. That first step of actually putting something down, you actually feel like you started whatever it is you're trying to do. So it's one you can't miss.
Yeah.
You have to do it, and what a great place to, to jump off with, the law of beginning. Just begin, like, and also your first step as a creative thing. The last thing I'll say about this particular law is that it doesn't mean that that's going to have to be that step forever. Like, it's not like it's like, that's the great thing about artistry and creativity, is that like you could put down a title and it can be a working title. It doesn't have to be the title that you finish with, but now you have a title and now you have something to call it. And now you have something that you're working on. It's a great first step. So,
yeah. And I just want to add as well, it's like, and also you will begin again over and over and over in your life. So just get used to beginnings,
Yeah.
Just through those small actions. I think that's always the best way to treat any beginning, is with a small gesture.
Well, I'm thinking the next really good law to probably use, just kind of popped out at me and seems so obvious, is the law of presence. Okay, the law of presence. Yeah. So that's the big one. Now is the only thing that truly exists. Die to the limits of yesterday. Rid yourself of the confinements of an idealized future and meet the perfect present where you are, free to live and create with the power and fullness of your being. So I think the thing about presence, which there's so much to say because this is such an important law, is that you are wherever you're at. And part of the challenge I think creatives have is that they convince themselves that somehow right now is not perfect, that it's not okay, that it's not enough, that it needs to somehow be better. And right now is all there is. And it's not always going to feel the way you want it to feel, or it's not always going to look the way you want it to look, but it is where you're at. And
there's no other place you can begin to
exactly
to tie that one back in, but yeah.
And I think like this is a good law to use sometimes, because it's like, okay, I get the law at beginning. Like, some of these laws, there might be things that you're like, yeah, okay, no, I just got to begin. I get it. The law of presence is kind of one of those things where you can use where it's like, okay, I am where I am. So it's happening now, not tomorrow, because you might not have another tomorrow. You might not have another later. It's going to happen now. So you go, well, let's just start right now. What's happening now? And let's use that. I used to have this teacher, June B. Wild. And one of my favorite things that she taught me was she'd always be like, use it. Fuck. Fuck. Use it. It's just like, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, like use that as the gasoline, as the fuel, as the whatever you need to like get the engine running and get the thing going. And you'd find that if you just trusted that, it had this kind of perfect surprise to it. You know what I mean? It opened so much. And also sometimes I think the law of presence is really nice, because when it isn't the way you want it to be, it actually creates opportunity for creativity that you don't realize you have within you.
Yeah. It's, I was saying this to some of my students a few weeks ago in an acting class, that like the problem is just like when we try to control a situation, when we try and control the present moment and what's happening, we're operating from the past in some level. And I was pointing out that the problem with that is that the past is never fully able to meet the present. It can never fully meet it in all of its subtlety and its nuance. And, the present moment will tell you everything that you need in terms of taking whatever step you need to take. in creativity. It will tell you if you're paying attention, and this is so much of, what I teach in acting too, right? It's just like, if you're paying attention, if you're open and receiving whatever is the truth and reality of this moment, you have everything you need. You know everything you need to know about how to respond in this moment, right? But only if you're paying attention. If you're not really paying attention, you're going to find yourself completely lost. You're going to find yourself completely lost in your ideas of how this all happened before, or other things that have happened before, or how you want things to pan out. And the whole time that you're doing that, you're not actually with the thing that can help you. You're not actually with the thing that can take you to the place that you want to go. And there's a massive amount of trust that kind of goes along with that. I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves, because that's another law too. But that's, I think, the challenge with presence, is that it does demand a certain kind of trust on a number of levels. But presence, man, it's where it's the creative point. Mm-hmm. It is the creative point.
I also would add that this law of presence it's kind of a life raft, because you have these moments where you just feel like you're sinking and you got nothing. And if you just go, okay, well, I feel like I'm sinking, let's work with that. That's sometimes the best place to start. You could go, maybe you're about to write a script and you're like, I feel like you don't think you have any ideas, or you feel like you don't know how to do it. And that feeling of not knowing how to do it, what if you infuse whatever you're about to do with that feeling, and you let that feeling inform and play a role in whatever happens? You might find out that it was such a perfect thing. And the universe, if you want to call it that, was giving you a gift if you just let the present moment be enough.
Yeah. And not knowing is a and actually a really incredible place to be. Mm-hmm. But that also touches on another law as well.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah, they connect. They all connect to each other in these really fun ways. But we should probably move along, because we've got lots more to get through. So I feel, unless you got some last thing to say about that.
No, I think we did a good little run at that. Why don't you pick another that stands out to you?
All right. What stands out to me? I'm just looking, seeing what jumps out. Practice. Practice jumps out.
I did not expect that.
Yeah. Your practice or discipline are the actions that give life to your dreams and the person you truly are. If your practice is a reflection of you, you create freedom. If your practice is a reflection of someone else, you will create friction.
Oh.
Ooh, nice. Yeah.
Nice. I was listening to a talk this morning, and it's part of my daily practice. And the speaker was talking about why setting goals is actually not the right way to look at a lot of the stuff that you want to do. He said, you want to set habits, because habits can make other habits easier to do. So he used the example of a lot of people quit smoking once they start building the habit of working out. And he was like, probably because they're hacking up a lung, they realize, hey, I don't want to be smoking. And so then the habit of not smoking becomes easier to change or break or whatever maneuver after you built this other habit. And he kind of pointed out that wealth and success are kind of like this as well, because for example, if people go I want to lose 20 pounds, that's a goal. But if you say, I want to make a habit of eating better every day and doing a little bit of a workout every day, you will lose 20 pounds, and your habit will make it easier for you to do other things, which will not only help you keep the 20 pounds off or more, but it will actually open up other things in your lifestyle. Whereas if you reach the 20 pound, I want to get 20 pounds off, and that's your goal, once that's done, what's driving you oh, I've got to keep the 20 pounds off, but that will run out. And the whole point that they had is that when you don't have good practice or habits, that runs out. It just runs out because it's not sustainable. So practice becomes very, it's obviously tied to the law of discipline as well, but I think,
right? Well, it's the same.
It is
thing.
the law
Practice,
of discipline. Yeah, that's right. Right. Okay. So yeah, so it's like, this way of life, right? Practice is kind of putting a way of life into your process.
Yeah, it's an active thing. It's a constantly active, moving, fluid, creative thing, which makes sense, that's a great example that you brought up in terms of like the goal setting, because it's like, because once you hit the goal, well, it's over, like there's sort of like you've hit there. Now what? Right now what is moving you, as opposed to something that's like, okay, like, eating healthier in some sort of, clear way, or exercising in some sort of clear way, getting outside, anything like it's building up something that doesn't have an end point. And I think that's a really important thing for us to have. I think that we obsess too much over having like endpoints, and we have the wrong ideas about achievement, right? Because like we have so many stories of people who achieve the thing that they've always wanted, and then right after, their whole world kind of comes crashing down, because like, well, what else am I doing?
Yeah.
Like it's, as opposed to something that's living with you, like which is what practices and disciplines are. These things that you live with. They're entities and sort of characters that are a part of your life. And I know for me, from our discussion about practice, about the law of practice and discipline, that conversation really opened my eyes to something, because to me, practice, discipline, those were some kind of like, those were words that kind of triggered me a little bit. Until through our conversation, I had the understanding, it's like, well, no, part of the problem is that myself and too many people were taking on practices and disciplines from other people.
Mm.
Like it's okay to listen to how other people do things, and if it meshes with you, absolutely go for it. But that our practices and disciplines are there to uphold our dreams and the person, the people that we are, and the people that we, I hesitate to say the people we want to be, but because to me, I think that like the people when we're in touch with who we authentically are, that's what our disciplines are about. It's about upholding that authentic self. And so those practices and disciplines are whatever it might be for you. And that's the thing. No one can tell you exactly what that is. It's like, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And that creates a conflict. You're going to be in conflict because that's from somebody else. That's someone else's shit. It's not your shit. Right. And maybe that works for them, but you need to figure out what works for you and bring those practices and disciplines into your life.
I also see practice as something that builds character, and it builds a sense of self, which is really important, especially for a creative being, to have a sense of there's something that you personally can kind of do or bring to the world. I think it's important that we recognize there's a connectedness between all of us. We all have similar struggles and similar things, but practice helps you kind of define a little bit about what you're bringing to the table. And, I think the thing about practice is people do have resistance to practice and discipline and habits. But here's the other flip side. And I think this is really important to remember when you're working with this law, is that it doesn't matter. You are always practicing. You are always disciplining, and you're always building a habit. Sometimes you're just doing it in a way that you don't want to do it. So if you hit snooze alarm in the morning every morning, you're building a habit. You're doing a practice. That's a discipline. And it's going to build you into something you might not want to be. So, I think this law is really good for getting you to be like, okay, at 6 o'clock every day when I get home from work or whatever your story is, I sit down and I write, or I memorize my lines, or I do this, or blah, 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 or whatever it is. Right. And it's like, I paint, I play my guitar, whatever it is. But you go, and that starts to be carved in to kind of your way of doing your life. Right. And it becomes something you count on. It becomes something that you look forward to. It becomes something that you begin to make important. Right. And it carves it out. The more you do it, the more it reaffirms it. So I think this is really good for creating some solidarity in your life, especially if you're feeling kind of wobbly or like disconnected. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just say one last point before we move on. They're not meant to be joyless. In fact, I think that a practice needs to have joy in it for you. If there's no joy in it, then find a different practice, find a different discipline.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you have enough connection to why you're doing it, you'll find the joy. But yeah, don't just do it because you think you have to. Do it because you want it.
Or because someone told you.
Yeah, don't do it because someone told you. That's not a great reason.
No.
All right. Well, the one that's calling to me, Evan, is the law of vision.
Oh, yeah. That's a big Brandon word right there.
That's a big one. Yeah, I do love this one. All right. Vision. The heart and soul is calling you towards something bigger than yourself. This dynamic, living passion is urging you to create, not just for the future, but right here and now. Listen, imagine, let yourself be moved to joyful, authentic action. So I guess maybe this kind of called to me because the way we kind of carried off of practice, right? Like your vision is a practice that's kind of like actualized. But one of my big discoveries about vision was I always used to look at vision as this like thing in the future. Like I see this happening. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And I think there's a part of that is vision. But when I realized that vision is happening right now, that's when the game changed for me because I'm envisioning it. So the law of vision isn't just the vision you see, it's you actually doing it. The doing of vision, is such an integral part to it. And I think the law of vision is so useful because you could be like kind of struggling to kind of get yourself to feel motivated or driven or connected or whatever. And then you start to like let yourself imagine like, well, what do I want to create? What am I trying to do here? What am I trying to build? And sometimes vision can also be like, what do I not want to happen? What world am I not going to walk into? And those things can create in this moment feelings. And vision, the reason why it changed for me as such a powerful tool was because I realized that vision could provoke incredible emotion out of me. And if that emotion got activated, action and things towards practice and just taking that beginning step, those became a lot easier because I was connected to the feeling. And even though the feeling felt very far away from me, I was having it right now. And by having it right now, I was using it to make it more my reality. And yeah, it's very powerful that way. So that's one of the big parts about vision that I definitely share.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such a vitally important thing to this conversation about vision, which is, I think we conventionally think about it as something that's out there in the future, in the distance somewhere. And it is that, but it also is right here and now. There's a connection, there's a thread that ties you from the moment you are in now to that moment later on. And you've got to start now, right? You got to start in the present. You got to pull in that thread here and now in what way that you can. And I think another aside to this as well for me is like, I think that vision can become skewed by ego. Like that's always kind of a danger, they can be egotistically driven. And I think that the goal for us is, and which is why I love using this word, but is calling, right? And which is why it's included in the description, which is like, it's something again, it's that something that's bigger than you. It's something that's bigger than you, that's calling to you. That's, you know, you hear it at some level of your being. And, you know, why, who knows, right? Why do you feel this calling to do this thing and to go in that direction? Who knows? Maybe you'll find out. But, I think that just looking at it in that sense of, okay, well, your vision is something that you are called to. There's something that has sort of implanted itself in your vision. This thing has implanted itself in your vision, and it stirs something inside of you. And you start to move towards it, as opposed to, you know, a vision of just being a big deal. You know what I mean? Like that's I think a trap that I just want to point out. You know, it's just like, yeah, like fame and fortune and all that stuff. That's all very fine and good, but it's got to be about something more than that. It's got to be about something more than that.
Yeah, I think so, because I think that wanting to be a big deal is not, it's like one of those things, it's not really a sustainable vision. You know, it's like, I mean, because you can kind of almost cheat it, you know, where when you're just trying to be a big deal, you're trying to go, you want to feel whatever it might be. Oh, did I get blocked out there for a second?
You did for a second.
All right. Well, basically
recap that for a few seconds.
Yeah. What I was saying was that, you know, you're basically,
I'm sure it was so good.
Oh, so good. It was so perfect, you know, and the world missed it. I forget now. No.
We were talking about, yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay.
So, okay, here, you're going for a feeling. At the end of the day, you're going for a feeling. That's a really important part of understanding vision. Vision, you believe in some ways, will get you that feeling, but there's vision beyond what you want to feel. There's vision about what you actually like. It's not so much about what you're going to get, but it's what is going to happen. Like what's going to be created out of what you're doing. And when it's just about you becoming a big deal, all that does is it self-serves. And the problem is that vision runs out when the self-serving is complete. And a really important part about vision is that it's most effective when it's designed to serve the whole table, when it's designed to serve everyone, when you are the bringer of the food to the dining room, you know, when you are the one that brings something that everybody gets to participate in, and you are the one that made it and created it, and now you get to share it. And the problem with becoming a big deal is that you don't get to share that with anybody, because honestly, really nobody cares that you're a big deal. I mean, other than what they can kind of get out of you, but then you just create a usury kind of relationship, and you're not going to be happy about that. So vision is about more than just becoming a big deal. And I think becoming a big deal by actualizing your vision is sometimes a byproduct of that. And I think people get focused on that. They go, oh, well, this person's really famous, I want to be famous. And it's like, yeah, but they got famous as a byproduct of something else. And that if it was just fame, you know, there would be a certain kind of emptiness in that, right? This is that's kind of a bigger can of worms, I'm sure, to open up. But I think the important thing about vision is like something I used to say, just to give an example, something I used to say when I was younger, and it was actually a really good little habit or practice, but it was like, everything I touch turns to gold. And I didn't mean that because I get gold. I was just like, everyone I interact with is better off for meeting me. And I really kind of made that my model. And dude, it's incredible what happens when you start having that kind of vision, because what happens is everybody wants to help you, because everybody's life's getting better by being around you, and everybody's succeeding and everybody's getting opportunity. And, you know, it's a really wonderful kind of way to look at it. And at the same time, because everybody's getting better, they really appreciate you and they're really thanking you. And it's like, it's a really good kind of thing. At the same time, I have to make one little caveat warning. If you do go out in the world and you say everything I touch turns to gold, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to appreciate that. some people might use your golden touch, and they might take advantage of it. So having a vision is a really good thing. We're talking about the practicality of using it right now, but also having a certain amount of respect for what you're trying to do. And vision is also, who do I want to bring into my life? You might not want to have a vision where it's like, come one, come all. It might be like, I have a vision that's specifically for people who want these things that I value. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to save the whole world. I think that's a really important element of the whole thing.
I just want to touch back because I love this sort of thing about like the dining room table, the dinner, like it's this thing that you've created to share. And just what you're saying now has sort of made me think of, your vision is a kind of light, and it's a light not just for yourself, but it's a light for other people as well who see it. It's there to light something for others, and not everyone is going to, be attracted to that light. Not everyone is, because it's maybe not theirs. It's not theirs to, to grab onto and to join in. But yeah, your vision is a light for yourself and for others. Yeah.
So, I mean, just to kind of further your thought, it's like, what do I want to light up? What do I want to put light on? What do I want to build? And I think like when you're writing a story, having a vision is a really good thing, because now you go, well, I want to tell a story about this because I want to put light onto it, and it becomes more like I'm doing it for more than just, I want to write a great story. I want to tell a story that matters, that's something that actually shines a light on something I care about and I think is important. And that's vision, and so then you have purpose in your writing, or I want to play this character because I want to shine light on somebody who's like this, you know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah.
So vision is a powerful tool in helping you find meaning and purpose, which is another law we'll get into later, but yeah.
Oh, and I want to, because this is just kind of hitting me right now, but like, the vision, like obviously like there's something somewhat metaphorical about that, because it's not always necessarily something that you see or picture. It can be an intuition. It can be an instinct. It can be, vision can speak in a number of different ways. And I think that's it. I just wanted to point that out. It's like, oh yeah, nice. Like vision comes in a lot of different forms. So
I mean, it can be, like you said, it could be a calling, it could be something you hear, and not something you project outward, but something you feel pulled towards. The relationship to it doesn't always have to be a projected thing. It can be I like the way you put it sometimes, because I think calling is accurate too, because sometimes it's like there's something out there, I need to go out to it, it's calling to me to get to it, and you don't know where that is, but you have direction because you hear the call, you feel the call, whatever that is, right?
And an author who I really enjoyed, Parker Palmer, I believe it was from one of his books, but I just loved it. He said, sometimes we're so busy, sometimes we get so busy asking life for what we want that we don't stop to ask what life wants from us. Because sometimes I think that like when we do stop and listen to, well, what is life asking of me? What does life want from me right now? Very often, in fact, I'm just going to take a stab out there. It's the same thing as what you want, actually. What life wants from you is in line with what you want too. So just another way of looking at it.
Love it.
All right. Moving on, because we got to move on. Okay. Which one am I gonna pick on here? You know what? Let's do trust, because that sort of came up a little while ago, and trust is a big one. So let's do that one now. Okay. Whoever you are, whatever you got, trust that it is enough. Learning to trust yourself and your ability to respond is a courageous thing to do, but is the key to creative freedom and expression. Wherever you are, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
It definitely has a very close relationship with the law of presence.
Yeah.
But I think that trust goes on to another thing where it's like, it's more in the leap, the leap
Yeah.
you're taking, and that's sometimes like maybe you're joining forces with something, or, I was talking with a friend of mine last night, went for beers. I haven't seen him in over a year and a half or something like that. We had beers, and he's getting married. He has a fiance. And I remember, like, I've known this guy for a long time before he ever met her. And he was telling, I was congratulating him. Like, he's like, "You're coming to the wedding," and all this. I'm like, "All right, great." And I was congratulating him, and he was telling me a bit about the story of how things kind of happened for them. And he was saying, because he was married before and it didn't work out with his ex-wife, but they're still friends. And I met her. She's a really, really nice woman. But between the two of them, they decided, they got married young. They decided at a certain point it wasn't really the right fit. And he and her still have a friendship. And so when his new fiance, who's his girlfriend, came into his world, she was really kind of feeling quite threatened by him having this relationship with the ex-wife and all of that. And, initially she was like, I don't want you to have this relationship with her. And he was like, well, I've known her for, 10, 15 years. I've only known you for a few weeks, and this is an important friendship in my life. And I'm not just going to kick someone out because you're uncomfortable with it. And this is really challenging for them in the beginning. And eventually, they figured out, okay, well, let's all get together. Let's all meet each other. Let's see each other. Let's kind of, whatever. And then his girlfriend and his ex-wife met, and then she got to experience and see that their relationship was really nothing to be threatened about. And he said, it didn't change that day. This took time. But we were talking about it last night. I was like, it took trust on your fiance's part to not not run away because you were not willing to bend on this thing. You know what I mean? And she had obviously been hurt in the past, and that was a factor that it was playing in. And she decided to trust. And they have an amazing relationship now, and they're about to get married. They just got a house together, brilliant, right? Like, just, but it takes trust. At some point, you got to take a risk. And I think this is the important lesson about trust. It's like, what's the risk? Because there's always a risk creatively, artistically, in life, for your dreams. There's always a risk. And the law of trust is, what risk am I going to take? For me, that's a big part of it. Because you can't expect to have your dreams and play it safe. You can't be 100% secure all the time. You have to let there be some room for error, some room for failure, some room for folly to occur. And the law of trust is like, okay, I'm going to trust that even though I don't know for sure if this will work, I'm going to take a chance at this. To me, that's a big part of what the law of trust is for me.
Yeah. And, you're touching on what I think is the unknown, which is also, we're going to be talking about that in this episode too. Yeah. But because, it's trust is that thing that allows you, as you said, to take that leap that is required in true acts of creation, true acts of creativity. Because a true act of creativity comes from the unknown. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it comes from the unknown. And how do you do that? How do you take that leap? And there's got to be something that you have some level of trust in, and what is that thing you have trust in? Because if you have no trust, you can't move, right? Like, if you can just sort of imagine, being in a space where you don't trust anyone or anything, or, what can you do in that space? If you could just imagine it, and I know there's people who truly live this way, and it's debilitating. It's debilitating. So where do we find our trust to take those leaps, to take those steps that are required? Yeah.
I think, to kind of make this practical, right? Like, if you're trying to get a jump, on your creativity, and you're trying to just make a step, right? Or maybe you're blocked. You're blocked because you're not trusting. So if this comes up for you, it's like, okay, well, what am I not trusting? And what if I did? And then, you go through it. So it's like an example that I could use as like a screenwriter is like, I don't know if this story is going to work. And so you kind of got to go, well, I don't know if it will, and I don't know if it won't. So, but I feel like I want to write it. So you got to trust that it might, and it might not work, but that's the risk you got to take, right? You got to give it a shot. At some point, you got to trust, you got to take a risk. You got to take a little bit of a leap and go for it. And I think the law of trust is like, well, what's holding you back? And what if you just trusted that this doubt you have, like maybe I'm not enough or whatever's going on. And it's just like, well, what if it was, it's something I say to my class all the time. I'm like, what if you were enough, or what if this thing that you're scared of, what if it wasn't a problem? And if you could see and I always tell them, if you could see the possibility that that might be true, even if it's the slightest thing, it's like seeing the crack in a wall and seeing light on the other side and knowing that there's another side. And now that there is something on the other side of this wall.
Yeah.
Can you get there? Well, we don't know, but at least there's something on the other side. But if you can't even see a crack, then you're just walled in, right? So trust is like, I think I can get through. I think I could find my way to the other side because it is possible that it might work on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, for me, it's this question of like, what if you are exactly where you were supposed to be? And what if you were enough? What if you have everything that you need? What if that were the case? That is an act of trust.
Love it.
Yeah. All right.
It's a big one. So it's hard to ever stop on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going to pick a different law, but now I just feel like I have to go with the law of the unknown. I got to do it. Got to do it. Okay. Unknown. The unknown is the land of unimagined possibility. While it can appear scary, the unknown is where true creation is discovered. Explore, play, get lost, and come alive. I mean, yeah, this is such a big one. This is great because, like, look, we all feel fear and anxiety. And something that I always try to remind myself of when fear comes up is that fear is also the same experience of excitement. It's the same feeling as excitement. It's just I'm interpreting it differently. So the feeling is there. The interpretation is maybe not the best. So I try to look at it like, instead of being scared of this, what if I was excited about it? And what would make me excited about it? And I think with the unknown, it's always going to be partly scary and partly exciting. And you need the fear to make it exciting, but it doesn't all have to be fear. And so I think, part of the law of the unknown is going, okay, I know I'm entering something that could not be known, and trying to make it known is getting me nowhere. So I'm going to go into the unknown, and instead of being scared of it, I'm going to go into it excited. I think that's kind of, and you go there because, as the law says, that's where everything great is. It's in the unknown. Everything you want, all your dreams, all the stuff that's the original work that you're trying to create, or the entrepreneur that's trying to build a business that doesn't exist. It's all in the unknown, and you have to enter it. So as scary as it is, you just go, how exciting that I've stumbled upon the unknown. Let's go and look. Let's go see what happens if I enter this world.
Yeah. As you said, it is where the excitement is, like there's certainly a certain element of fear that kind of comes with that, but it is where the excitement is. It's where the life is. I mean, if you look at any artist in any discipline, if you can find like a good, like a documentary or a way in which you can see these people work, having the benefit of coming from an acting background, it's like, you can always see people doing their work, and the best the best actors, like you watch them, you know, in the stuff that actually makes it into the film, and you just go, holy shit, like they are in the unknown right now. This is the best. All right, these are the best actors that I'm talking about. Like they are in the unknown, and that's what makes them the best, is because they go into that place of being like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to occur next. I don't know what I'm going to even do. Right? I know that this is kind of what's happening, and these are the words that have to come out of my mouth at some point in time, but this exploration, you see there's this play, there's this exploring that's happening in the work. It's not you're seeing them in process. You're not seeing some sort of completed, finished thing. You're seeing them in process, and it's that whole lightning in a bottle type of situation. And other art forms are not so dissimilar. The best in their fields and anything, they have learned to have some sort of a good relationship with this unknown space, which is why they're so incredible.
Man, this whole thing about the unknown, it's like life would be so boring without it, yes. And life is so boring when you know everything, like when you just know how it's all going to go. Alan Watts actually has this talk where he talks about how if you already know how it all goes, that's all the past. And so it just be like, it's just the past, right? And like something about the unknown is like the unknown is the future. It is possibility. It is discovery. And so, I think maybe using this law to get yourself jump started is like going, well, what's something I don't know? Is actually look for the unknown. Look for something that you don't feel like you know how it's going to go. And a great lesson I learned in writing was that you paint your characters into a corner you don't know how to get out of. That's where your best writing exists. Not in the, I know, I'll put them in this corner and blah, blah, blah. And, but if you put them in a place where you're like, how the fuck am I going to get myself out of this one? Then you're going to find out you're not only going to become a better writer, but you're going to make something really interesting, because if you really legitimately get them out of that corner and you don't cheat it, you don't fake it, you don't do any like coincidental kind of nonsense, you will find out that your characters are incredible, that your creative mind has possibilities you didn't realize. It just, the land of the unknown is a place for tremendous growth and exploration. And it's really wonderful. Definitely scary, but it's wonderful. And I think we just need to change our relationship to it. Yeah,
you said it. I'm not gonna say anything else.
All right. Well, let's do another law. Let's do another one.
Let's do it. All right. What do we got left on my side of the sheet here? Okay, we've got 2 left on my side of the sheet. Let's do experience. Let's do experience. All right. Experience is in constant motion, informing and instructing us in both positive and negative ways. Your experience, no matter what that might be, and to whatever extent is of tremendous value when you offer it creatively, openly, and honestly.
This this actually reminds me of a writer that I've been working with, and he has a life story that is unlike anything I've ever heard anyone ever talk about. And his experiences are so unique. And I think we talk about this a bit, and I'm like, obviously, you're working, you've done a lot of healing around all of that, and, you've worked through it, but you have insights into stuff that very few people, they're going to understand it the way that you understand it. And I think that experience is really kind of a unique tool, because it's really taking ownership of your authorship in your creativity. It's really saying like, I've lived life, and even if life was not even if life was somewhat mundane, that experience has wisdoms in it. It's like, um,
Hmm.
but that's the great thing about it. Experience doesn't have to be this crazy dramatic thing, although that can be quite unique and create really cool opportunities. As we see someone with what's his name? He did Clerks, Kevin Smith.
Oh, Kevin Smith. Yeah, yeah.
Kevin Smith, like he took his experience and he made Clerks. And that was which probably seemed like on paper, a very mundane kind of experience, right? Some guys clerks at a store, but it's funny and it's playful and it's unique and it's personal. And I think the law of experience is a great example of just kind of letting what you have to offer be valid.
Yeah, using it in a creative way, right? Like it's I'm borrowing somewhat from a author, Thomas More, but essentially I think that an interesting aspect of this is that our experiences don't make us who we are. They provide us with the raw materials with which we make ourselves.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's he was talking about family because he's a psychotherapist, right? And so he was talking about, people often, well, my mom was like this and my dad didn't, this and whatever, and it's like, and my brothers and my sisters were, and certainly like there's probably a lot of truth and validity to it, but in essence, he was saying like your families don't make you, but they do provide you with the raw material with which you make yourself. So I'm extending that. I hope that he doesn't mind that I'm extending that into just our life experience. Like our experiences just provide us with these sort of raw materials, and we decide with what we do with that. And are we going to use them creatively? Are we going to use them positively? Because again, part of the side of this is like we can turn those experiences against us, right? We can tell a story, which is another law, but I think that's for next week. But we can easily turn our experiences against us in ways that don't serve us positively, that don't lead to anything creative. They don't contribute to that light and that vision that we talked about, right? Like they can become poisoned. Yeah.
Well, I think with every guest we've had, one of the things we try to get to is a little bit about their life experience and what got them to where they are. Because, we find that to be so fascinating. I think that, to use this as a tool or a jump starter or a problem solver type of thing, you might look at it like my experience is valid is something
Yes.
that you might say, like, okay, my experiences are valid. Like maybe you go like, I haven't lived a very interesting life, or I haven't lived enough. I'm too young or whatever. But like one of my acting teachers back in the day, Matthew Harrison, he gave us a really great tool. And he used to go, what do you know about, and then you fill in the word. So jealousy. And then you just go, what do you know about that? And then you'd kind of investigate, well, what do I know about this particular thing? And you could really just fill in anything. And your experience of it became valid and important and useful. And you kind of became more aware of your personal understanding through your experience, whatever something was. And I found it extremely useful because, I found a lot of actors, like there was actors who, we've met so many through our lives, but, there's always those actors who are like, I don't have any drama. My parents are great. Like they support me. They encourage me. They actually help me get here. It's like, and then the rest of us are like, I don't even have a dad, it's like, or something. But it's like, it's like, I remember a lot of actors who had like really healthy lives being like, I don't have anything to bring because I don't have like drama or experience. But it's like the law of experience doesn't judge. It's like your experience is valid just as much as someone else. You don't need to have a dramatic life. And yes, like there might be Someone who has a more dramatic life might use their experience differently than you use yours, but your experience is useful in your own way. And part of your job, I believe, as a creative being is to figure out how to use your experience to serve you. That's why I love that saying.
Yeah.
It's the raw materials. You decide how to use the raw materials.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm something that my wife has said many times, which is like, people need to stop sharing their opinions and start sharing their experiences. Just as, because shared openly and honestly, our experiences are things that connect us. Our opinions are very often things that divide us, right?
Brilliant.
Because like being a human being, it doesn't matter really, like it is not an easy thing. Like being a human in our world is full of challenges, and it doesn't matter if you feel like, you've lived a very mundane, uneventful kind of life. You've had some experiences that are, there's a good chance they're more significant than you might give them, cause to believe. But when you get really honest about some of these things and you begin to share them, like they can be tremendously connecting. They can open up a conversation. They can open up something creatively. And
there's something you kind of like kind of cracked an egg. I don't know why I'm using that analogy. What analogy? Such a weird one. But anyway, the whole idea that like if you share your experiences with your art, it's so much more impactful than to share your opinion. Like to do some opinion piece, like I have an opinion of this character, or I have an opinion of this story. It's like, what if you shared your experience of that character, your experience of that story? What if you shared your experience through that character, through that story? I think that is something people could connect with, because I think part of the job of being an artist, or at least an artistic being, is being able to communicate your experience to someone and have them understand it and connect with it. And I think that's what we all want. Like if you're in a really like loving relationship or a best friend, if you truly care about that person, you want to know, how are you experiencing it? Like what's going on for you? And when they share that with you, it is what bonds you. But what their opinion about it is, that just keeps things superficial. And I think the law of experience, what I'm realizing actually in this talk about it this time, is that, it's the law of kind of bringing us closer to each other. It's the law of bonding us with our internal worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. This is kind of like almost a bit of a side to it that I hadn't necessarily considered before. But like our experiences have a power to connect us, which is, and I think that's really maybe the biggest thing that I might be willing to say at this point, is that, we can use our experiences to connect with others, or we can use them to divide and conquer.
True.
Really.
Good point.
All right, Brandon.
All right. Well,
we're getting there. We're getting there.
Just a few more people, but I think these are good. Honestly,
they are. No, I'm really enjoying this sort of revisiting and diving back into these. This has been really, really great.
Yeah, me too. Okay, I'm picking the law of authenticity. Authenticity. Who you are is of inherent, unfathomable worth. Thinking or trying to be something other than who you are will create fear and conflict. It's also not necessary. Have the courage and vulnerability to be and express what is at the center of your being. It will always take you to the right direction, or in the right direction. I mean, authenticity is something, I think it's a really beautiful thing when people let themselves have an authentic expression and they let themselves be true. And I understand why it's so hard. And it was definitely and has been a struggle for me in my own life, because we have lots of demands. Like we want to fit in, we want to be liked, we want to be accepted, all of that stuff. And I think unfortunately a lot of the time we trade authenticity, and then we don't know why we feel stunted or stuck or whatever, and unloved. And
Mm-hmm.
the only way to actually experience love and to experience flow and to experience your true essence at work is to be authentic and to let your truth surface and kind of become a part of your expression of life as to how you are, who you're going to be, what you're going to do, and all of that. And I think it's one of the most important laws for me personally, because I think it takes so much courage. But I think when you do it, you become unstoppable and invincible in a way that you just don't even realize you ever had inside of you. So I feel like the law of authenticity is something where you kind of go, okay, well, what if I just let my truth be enough? What if I let it come out? What if I didn't try to please anybody, didn't try to be liked? What if I was just unapologetically me and I let that happen?
Yeah.
And that is a risk, but I think there's a great reward that can come out of it if you're willing to not only try it but commit to it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think authenticity is, in many ways, I think it's maybe one of the most challenging of all of the laws that we have here. And I think it presents a challenge. Like that, the law itself, authenticity is like a challenge to you, and it's like a lifelong one, because it's not like you're ever going to arrive. It's like, oh, I know who I am now, and that's it, because then that's just, well, now you're just hung up on an idea of who you are, right? And when it's a constant discovery, that authentic voice, that authentic you is a constant discovery. We are mysteries to ourselves, right? But in a strange way, when we allow that, when we open up to that, and I think it begins with that acceptance that who we are is enough, that we are enough, that who we are is of worth, with that who we are is of worth aside from anything that we have ever done or feel like we have to do or be. It's like, no. Just by you existing, your existence is like confirmation of worth, and that is a tremendously challenging thing for most of us. We have been conditioned to think otherwise of ourselves, and because we're kind of, I was listening to some Ram Dass last night actually, and he was talking about this. But basically, like from early age as kids, like we are told, like we're basically socialized. Some things are acceptable and some things are not, and depending on how much that was done and what context and everything, like we can start to develop ideas about ourselves and who we are, and have that need for validation, external validation from other people, and through that we lose touch with that authentic self, who we are. What is the, going back into like vision as well. Like I think we talked a little bit about how authenticity and vision come together. You yourself, the authentic visionary, Brandon.
Well, yeah, I don't consider myself the authentic visionary. My whole model for what I've been trying to build is authentic visionary, like as an idea in the world. Yeah. Because I not only am attempting to do my very best to be an authentic visionary myself, but I want to encourage everyone else to be. And that's really what everything that I've been building towards. I realized that, like, oh, that's kind of my mission in life, is like at least from everything I touch turns to gold. Ever since I've been a little kid, all I ever wanted people to do was to take their imagination and make it their reality. Like, and I experienced doing it, and I was like, I feel like everybody should do this. And what I also learned, the reason why authenticity kind of made its way in there, because vision was kind of very encompassing of imagination, but like, what if I made my vision, like my true unapologetic ideas, like what if I could share them and make them real? And it's kind of nice that we came off of experience, because experience, I actually realized, plays a lot into this, like your authenticity is a part of your experience. It's a part of your, you're just your life. And I started out like making these little action movies with soldiers and guns and spies and stuff. And I loved it because that was a fun thing to do as a kid. And I thought, let's make this into a movie and let's get everyone involved. And, and people enjoyed it. It was fun. So yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to like kind of take anything away from what you're saying. My point was just though that like, yeah, like authenticity is so important, because you could go your whole life and not create what you really want. And I think authenticity is like, but what's in you? Like, what do you really want to do? And I think we all have fears like, oh, people won't like it. People won't accept it. It will show too much about me maybe, or whatever, but authenticity, it is the hardest, because it takes the most courage. It's the most challenging, as you put it, because you got to get over yourself to do it.
Yeah. And but the opposite is to be in hiding.
Yes.
Is to be in hiding your whole life and never really be you, and never really start to understand who you might be.
Mm.
Yeah.
I realized that to make this a practical step for somebody like a jump starter or a problem solver is get over yourself. This might be the law of authenticity. Is get over yourself. There's this great comic. What's it called? Let me just look it up here really quickly, because it's called The Awkward Yeti. You ever heard of that one?
Oh, yeah.
The heart and the brain. And then sometimes other organs that are in the body. But there's a really simple little cartoon, and the heart is like carrying like trauma, the past, like all these things on his back, like rocks, like these massive rocks, and just like walking, and it's getting heavier and heavier. And then it comes across a tiny little step, and it's like minor inconvenience. And the heart's like just breaking down, like, oh my God. And the brain comes up, and I think it's like says something like, I think you're overreacting, because it's like you're carrying all of this shit, your past, your trauma, all of that. And authenticity is kind of like, what if you just let go of all of that? What if you just let go of all the hurt, all the times you're bullied, all the times that people didn't laugh at your joke or laughed at you or whatever? You just let all that go, and you just did this thing as though you were just a free spirit. Because so much of us get stifled because we have past hurt and past trauma and things that didn't work. And authenticity is the courage to let all of that go for a moment and just be you for real for a moment. And if you can string a few of those together, man, magic can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's terrific. I mean, I never would have thought necessarily, but letting go is such a huge part of authenticity. Can you let go of all of your ideas of unworthiness and be who you are?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I love revisiting this stuff, because it's like we kind of figured some of this stuff out, but we're still learning it too. It's great. It's like we're forever on a journey, you and I, as we're working this stuff. It's wonderful.
All right, we got 2 more, folks. We got 2 more, and then you'll be free of us
until the next episode.
No, we're actually doing pretty good. We're just we're a little past an hour, but we're good. We're nice. Clipping along. Cool. All right, so appreciation. For some reason, this one wanted to be the last one that I called out.
Yeah.
Appreciation is your gateway to wonder and a world of greater beauty. Show appreciation not only for yourself and your work, but for others as well. This will end any traps of comparison, as well as nourish healthier environments for everyone's life and creativity to thrive.
Oh man, that's nice.
Yeah. So appreciation, wonder. I think that that was something I think that as writing this was like a word that came in. Like wonder is a huge part of appreciation. It opens us up to wonder, which is something that I think that we run the risk of having that dampened down as we get older, and we never want to lose our sense of wonder at the world. But appreciation, like I think that we can become so hard on ourselves, like we can be so hard on ourselves. And I don't know how much that serves us. It's not about bullshitting ourselves, but like there's this weird thing where I think that we think about being honest with ourselves is some sort of like act of like being hard. Like being honest and being hard are different things. And through it we can end up losing any appreciation for, the things that we have done. We can lose our ability to celebrate how far we've come, how much we've learned. And as with many things, it starts, I think, with ourselves. When we can learn to appreciate ourselves. Interestingly enough, this goes really well with authenticity. Now that
it all works out so nice.
It all works out, but like, when you have that appreciation for your authentic self, what you have to give, how you can contribute, and it's not in lieu of recognizing where we can grow and where we can learn, not at all. In fact, I would say that being able to appreciate actually helps us to learn even better. I think it helps us to grow at an even faster level because we're not berating ourselves, like we can take the criticism, we can take the areas where we need to grow, and we can have a little bit more perspective on the whole thing. And also appreciating others, I think, like in terms of comparison, like comparison is just such a dangerous trap for anybody in life. But yeah, like as being a creative, which is being a human being is being a creative. Yeah, that it ends that trap, as it says, it ends that appreciation, ends that trap of comparison. And it is a trap because I think it takes you again away from your authentic self in a number of ways, because through that comparison thing, you are either trying to be like somebody else, or you are trying to, you're sort of, you can end up contriving some part of yourself. It's like, oh, well, this is how I'm different from other people. This, and you kind of hold it up and you wave it in the air. It's like, this is what makes me different. And that's not what makes you a special human being. That's not what makes you an authentic human being. That's an ego trick.
That's ego. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Go ahead, Brandon.
It's a tricky little thing, that ego.
Oh yeah.
That'll get you in all sorts of funny ways. Well, I definitely agree. You're very on point with that, the comparison part of it. I have a client, she was talking about how, she's like writing novels, and she's like, well, people, like, I'm so old and people have so much more experience on me. And someone else is like, you're not competing with them. You're competing with who you were yesterday, Yeah. And it's tricky, like I get it. Like everybody has this struggle, right? But here's the thing: if that was really a good argument, if that was true, then a 20-year-old would never be successful at 20 something, But there are all sorts of people who are successful and write great things at 20 something, Mm-hmm. And there's people who they jump into the arts and they're successful within a very short period of time, sometimes months, but like sometimes just years, like just a few years, and all of a sudden, boom, they have a big career. You don't, and that's not just with arts, that's with entrepreneurialism, that's with all sorts of stuff. So the law of appreciation, I think, is, when it comes to comparison, I think one of the ways you can use it, because I'm thinking about the practicality of it here, is like, instead of comparing yourself to someone, appreciate that they're there and like they're doing it. And that makes it, because they're doing it, it proves more that you can. But I think we use comparison a lot as like some negative against us, right? It's like, okay, like that's what it took for them to be successful. How do I get there? And by the way, like, people have all sorts of different journeys. Some people, it takes them 20, 30, 40 years to figure it out,
Yeah.
And some people, it only takes a few years, and no one knows if your journey is going to be a few or it's going to be a lot. But like, appreciation is kind of like, you can close the gap by appreciating that you're standing on the shoulders of giants and they're making it easier and they're lifting you up by having already done it. The other part of appreciation, I think, which is, it's so much bigger than that though, because that's like such a small part of it, because appreciation is just, I appreciate that I made it through this hard period in my life. I appreciate that, I got, both my legs to be able to walk around, or, I appreciate that I can speak English. It's like, there's so much to appreciate. And when you get into this kind of place of gratitude and you just feel this really good feeling of like, I have so much available, so much that is at my disposal, you begin to see yourself as abundant. So I think like the law of appreciation can really be something where you go, well, let's focus on how abundant I am. How much is here for me to I used to coach soccer, and one of the guys on the team, he apparently ended this halftime talk. I just jumped into my mind, but I thought it was funny. And he was laughing, and I was like, what's so funny? He's like, you came in at halftime and you're like, guys, I'm giving you a whole platter of fruit here, and you're picking at the grapes. Because I was giving him advice or whatever on coaching. He's like, that's hilarious. And I was like, it's kind of like, that's kind of like where this is though. It's like, people are picking at the grapes going, oh, life's so scarce, there's so little. And if laws of appreciation is kind of like, there's everything you ever wanted, if you're just willing to like look at the platter of life. There's so many people who have done success in the arts, or done success in business, or done whatever, and you can just appreciate that and pick from it and take from it and use their guidance and their mentorship and all of that. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like there's even more than that, but it's like,
there's an incredible relationship between presence, I'm realizing, and appreciation, which is just like, it's all there. It's all here for you right now in this moment. If you would only see it in a certain kind of way. And I also want to bring up something as well with this whole thing of comparison. It seems like some of these laws come with these sort of like questions. Like, it's sort of like, well, do you want A or do you want B? Right? Like, there's these questions that kind of can make it really, really simple. And appreciation is like this thing of, it asks this question, especially when it comes to the comparison trap of, it's just like, look, do you want to resent and feel shitty about yourself? Do you want to resent this person and feel shitty about yourself? Or do you want to be inspired by them? Like, if you see someone who's doing something incredible, like, you do have that is something that you can develop. Be inspired by that. Don't take it on as like, oh, I'm not there. Well, and now I'm going to try and nitpick every little thing that I don't think is great about, like, like, what a terrible environment that you create by doing that kind of shit. And I've seen it go down all the time. I'm sure everyone can, people are just picking people apart, and it's just like, just appreciate this person. Just in terms of like a little story. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like when I was doing like a summer acting intensive a number of years back, like it was just one of the most incredible classrooms that I've ever been a part of. And for this stage of it, it was like a 2 week with the 2 weeks with this particular group that I was with, but I'd never been in such an atmosphere, or at least not to this level, but we were all sort of sitting and standing in awe of each other's work. Like we were watching each other and just being like, holy shit, like that scene that you guys just did, that exercise that you guys just did, like that just blew my mind. Like it just, and then you would get up and you would put forth like, and you just took that and you're like, wow, what incredible work is happening in this space. And then it just kind of fed everybody. We just all fed on that together, you know, and it just lifted us up level after level. And next thing you know, you did something and then people were just like, holy shit, that scene that you just did. And you're like, oh yeah, really? Like it's, that's what can happen when you work this law of appreciation. That's the kind of environment that you can foster. That's the kind of creativity and inspiration that can thrive in appreciation.
I feel like I could go on and on. I have so many examples running through my mind, but
we got to call it at some point.
I will spare the details for now.
The last one
here. So the law of process. So let's talk about process, shall we? Everything is in constant process. You are in constant process. It is the nature of life and creativity. Don't be a perfectionist. Be whatever step you are making right now. It's the only one you can take, and it is as important as any other. Yeah, it's like that. There is a moment, I was sharing this with my class the other day, when I was 21, and I was down in Los Angeles, and it's just this green want to be in the film industry kid. I remember I was down at the Kodiak Theater where they hold the Oscars. If you ever been there, there's these pillars or whatever where they have all the Oscar winning films, and there's these blank spaces where the next Oscar winners will go. I remember looking at those blank spaces and just trying to figure out where my Oscar winner would be. You know what I mean? And it's a very important moment in my life. Whether that actually happens in reality or not, but just the process of going down there to the big Hollywood machine as this kid, and it was just such a distant thing for me. It was something that I never thought I could even be involved in. I never even thought that I could even be a part of the film industry. So everything that I've ever done, it has been a success for me because I never even thought I could even be invited to even be a part of it, but to be down there and be looking for a spot where maybe in enough years I could get my film on that list, carved into that. That's the process, that's a step in the process. And I was saying to my class the other day, I was like, let's just say I get to the point where I win the Oscar for a film, if that were to happen. What is that Oscar without that step of being that kid in the Kodiak Theater looking for that spot on the wall? Like, would I give that up? Because I realized that moment was just as important as whatever the moment of holding the award would be, because they're the same. They're so important. But at 21, that's where I was at, and wherever, if that ever were to occur, I'd be wherever I was at. But the thing is that this is the part of process. It's like, you gotta like love that this moment is part of the journey. Like, you wouldn't skip it. And so I think we sometimes we don't really take a moment to really appreciate the fact that, like, sitting in front of your computer looking at a blank page or whatever is a really important part of the process. It's so important. and it's so meaningful and it matters. So if you could kind of appreciate whatever place you're in right now as a part of the process of where you're going, I think you could just have a much better, joyful experience of the journey.
Yeah, and I think that in many ways, process, again, connected to so many other laws here. I'm like, oh yeah, this is connected to presence, and this is connected to vision, and this is this is connected to a bunch of things. But in terms of presence, like, I think that that's a huge thing that the law of process teaches is like, in tandem with that presence thing. It's just like, look, just be with the step that you're in right now, because it is as important as any other step in this process. Like, it's not about that, the thing at the end. You're not there. You're not at the last 2 steps, but you can't get to those last 2 steps without taking this one right now. It's this thing of like, remember to just be where you are and to be with this step, because it's important. Like, it is, and it's as important as any other step in this process can be. It has to be in fact, it has to be the most important one, is the one that's right in front of you, because you can't get to the other ones otherwise. So yeah, I don't know. Process, man. I loved your story though too. Like, it's
thanks.
About the, like, that's beautiful. It's like that connecting thread. I remember I used to have somewhere I used to live at one point. I don't remember where it was, but I had it written somewhere where it was just like, it's like, where you are now is, I don't even remember how I put it, but it was like, where you are now is part of the story that you will tell. Right. And, you think of like all these people that you might admire who, they're up on some stage or doing some interview telling their story about how they were, they had no money and they were, they were living on next to nothing, and nobody liked their shit. And then, it was like, it's like that, this part of that story, and it's like, and I was thinking of giving up and blah, blah, blah. It's interesting because I don't know how much we sometimes take those stories truly to heart, because I think if we truly took a lot of those stories to heart, we would dare incredible things. And I think that some people do, because then those people will go on to say, it's just like, I was in such a low point, and then I listened to this interview or I read this book, and they said that, and someone took it to heart. Someone took it so deeply to heart that it just drove them to action. It showed them the person that they are and that they want to be in some kind of way, and they took the step, and they worked towards it, and they figured it out. Process is figuring it out. That's a huge, that's process. Process isn't knowing it. I think that's an illusion too, is process isn't necessarily knowing how everything is going to pan out. Process is just like dealing with the thing that you have to deal with now to head in the direction that you want to go. Right. That's all it is, and it's dynamic too. It's dynamic. Some things will go according to plan, and other things will definitely not.
And I think also with process too, is like, it's not just about where you're getting or what you think, the end point is. It's who you're becoming. It's this whole urine process, and like, if you're,
I'm sorry, a urine process,
urine, yeah, no, urine process. You're in process, Evan. God damn it! Should have studied more Shakespeare. So you're in process, and that means that you will learn to speak with more clarity in future. Well, anyway, my point is that, you don't know who you're becoming and what's happening to you as you try to get to wherever you're trying to get to. Um, you know, self-improvement is a natural byproduct of having goals and dreams. You actually just kind of become more in line with whoever your goals and dreams are if you actively try and go after your goals and dreams. And if you're sitting there looking at the blank page as a writer and you're banging your head and you're like, oh my God, I can't write anything, or you just wrote a bunch of stuff and you're like, this is garbage. If you could just be like, I'm in process, I'm like, I'm getting out the crap, I'm getting out the crud, I'm getting the rust out of the pipes, so the water can run clear. If you looked at it like that, you would begin to see that this is all part of the process. This is all necessary, and it's important. Don't get upset that rust is coming out of the pipes when you turn the water on. Clear the rust out. Look at it like, the more I run the water, the more I get something through this, the more I get cleaner through this, the more that these pipes are going to run clear, then I'm going to get what I actually want out of the other side of this. And yeah, process is like, just like, you got to look at it. You got to go through those steps. And, you don't even know, like, you think what's so important is winning the award, getting the Ferrari or whatever the hell it is that you want at the end of the day. But you don't realize that it's who you're going to be. That's actually what's really going to matter, and you don't even know what that needs to be or what that looks like and why that's so good, because that's so hard to understand, but that's a part of process too. So,
yeah. And most of life is process, like is in process. It's rarely at those sort of starting and ending points. It's in fact those lines, you're in the middle. Like most of the life is in the middle.
Yes.
and in some ways that whole beginning and ending thing is also becomes blurred in the whole process, in process as well. Beginning and ending gets blurred in process as well. So just learn to make peace with process, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let's do beers and then let's wrap it up. I do have some things to say for closing thoughts, but I want to do beers first.
All right. Well,
go ahead.
I'll go ahead. I'm drinking the Baja Bound Mexican lager from Red Truck Beer. It's good stuff.
I don't think I've ever had that one.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's better than their classic lager. I don't know. People I guess love their classic lager. I'm not a huge fan, but they're
they seem to like everything else they do, but
I seem to like everything else that they do except for their most popular beer. And I'm not saying that just to be one of those people.
Yeah.
I genuinely am just not great. Don't really care for it. Anyhow.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm not sure if I've ever had this or either of us have ever had this. But this is from Hoyne Brewing, and it's a Belgian cherry wit beer.
Ooh.
Entrenos. Is that how you say that?
Entreneuse?
Entreneuse.
We should know that.
Well, it's tasty. It's a really good beer. I've enjoyed it. It's got obviously like a little bit of a red tinge to it from the cherry, but it's a nice little tasty wheat beer. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I only have really positive things to say about it. It's been going down and I was about to finish it. So I'm like, we better talk about beer pretty quick here, because I want to drink it. so yeah,
sometimes sometimes I find that like when beers have like cherry in them, they can take on a kind of like a cough syrup taste. Does it avoid the cough syrup taste?
I'm definitely not getting that. But I understand what you mean. I mean, cherry is it's an interesting flavor to put into a beer. I mean, it's it's not as common, right?
Yeah.
I could see it also more in like an ale, like something like a darker type of beer, to give it a little sweetness. But no, in this case, it works out pretty nice. I think with fruit, when fruit again gets implemented into beer, for me, what's most important is that it's done it's like a nuance. It's like small and subtle. If they do too much of it, I find like, okay, well now I'm just drinking juice, so
it loses its beer quality.
So I just like a little bit of the flavor, and I feel, for me at least today, super hot day, it's been a good little brew.
All right. Closing
final-
comments. Closing
thoughts.
comments.
God damn it, Evan.
Let's just keep talking over each other.
All right. Well, hey guys, listen. I'm proud to announce that we now have an official website up, wayoftheartist.com. So you guys should definitely go check that out. And we have basically a free PDF, like a free ebook on there, which is of these laws. And basically, we're doing another episode. So probably one of us will probably mention this again. But if you want to get a paper copy of the stuff that we're talking about and just have your own little set, go to the website. We're giving it away for free. It's something for you. It's something we created just so people could like interact more with this content. And also not just that, but actually like be more creative, and have some cool stuff to do. It's been a little brainchild that we've kind of worked out and put together. And we thought, hey, maybe this will be useful. So let us know what you think. If you like it, if you want any changes to it, if there's something that maybe could improve. I mean, this is the first edition of this idea. But this talk and the next one we have, they're about each one of the laws, the artist laws that we've discovered. And, these will kind of help you get a little more detail on how to use them and what they are. So yeah, I'm proud to share it because I think, I think you'll agree, Evan, the website turned out pretty nice, and I'm happy with where it's at right now. So it's nice to have something where people can go and actually kind of connect with us, and we can connect with you, and we can kind of maybe share a little bit more of the content in a way outside of the podcast. So that's really cool. And then I guess, my final thoughts on all of this, I just want to say for me, it's been really good to revisit all of this. I mean, it's funny because there's certain things that you kind of like figure out because we've talked about a lot of this stuff already. But like every time we talk about it again, I always find I come away with something I'm a little bit sharper, something a little new. So that's been really nice. I feel like this has been helpful for me because I definitely feel more inspired for myself just to kind of like look at the laws we've talked about today and like implement them into my process and, move forward with them. And it's just great to get more clarity on it all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been a really wonderful trip back down this road again, but it's a new road at the same time. It's like, oh yeah, there's discovering new things all the time, with this stuff when you really put your attention on it. Again, part 2 coming out next week. We're gonna talk about and break down the next the final half, the back 10 of these, although they're in no particular order. Yeah, this has been really great. And I guess the last thing I would leave people with is just take a look at the, obviously go and check out the site. And if you're interested, get the downloadable, it's free. So, check it out. But look at all of these different laws that we've been talking about. And to borrow something that you had brought up earlier in the podcast, ask that question. What do you know about this? What do you know about trust? What do you know about presence? What do you know about process? What do you know about these things? Engage with these things and find out kind of like how you understand that, get like what your perspectives are on these things. Don't just take our words for it. You might have something really wonderful to contribute to all of these things. I'm sure that you probably do. Make these things live and breathe for yourself. And I can't wait to see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the show and being part of a community of creatives and artists building a more supportive and compassionate world. If you appreciated the conversation you just heard, please consider subscribing to the show and telling others about it. It really does matter. If you want to connect with us and learn more about the show, you can do that by visiting our website, wayoftheartist.com.